Welcome to Life Stories, where we bring you heartfelt tales of resilience, love, and life's deepest lessons. Today, we share an emotional journey of a woman named Emily, who faced profound loss and an unexpected family conflict after her husband John's passing. Through love, strength, and determination, Emily honors her husband's final wishes while overcoming betrayal and standing up for what's right. This story is a testament to the enduring power of love and the courage to fight for justice. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Life Stories as we begin today's heartfelt journey. When John and I first met, it felt like destiny. I was a young server at a diner in Chicago, hustling to make ends meet, and he was a freelance interior designer, brimming with creativity and kindness. He had a knack for bringing warmth and life into any space he touched, a gift he also carried into our relationship. We were inseparable from the start. And over 30 years of marriage, he became not just my husband but my partner in every sense of the word. Life had its challenges, of course, but John's optimism always carried us through. He had this way of turning even the darkest situations into opportunities for growth. It wasn't until 2 years ago that life dealt us a blow we couldn't easily overcome. John was diagnosed with advanced cancer during a routine health check. By the time they discovered it, the cancer had metastasized, leaving little room for hope. When the doctor broke the news, John squeezed my hand tightly, his expression a mix of shock and resolve. "We'll get through this, Em," he said, his voice steady even as my tears began to fall. I nodded, though the words caught in my throat. From that moment, my world revolved around making his remaining time as meaningful as possible. John insisted on continuing to work for as long as he could. "It keeps me sane," he'd say, smiling weakly as he worked on his laptop from bed. I admired his resilience, but I also saw how quickly his strength was fading. Every day became a race against time. At the diner, my colleagues were nothing short of amazing. When I explained the situation, they rallied around me, rearranging shifts and encouraging me to leave early whenever possible. "Go take care of your man," Emily, my manager, would say with a reassuring pat on my shoulder. Their kindness allowed me to focus on John without the constant worry of losing my job. John and I found solace in the small moments, sharing a quiet breakfast, watching the sunset from our backyard, reminiscing about our travels. But as the weeks turned into months, his condition worsened. One evening, while I sat beside his hospital bed, he turned to me with a weary smile. "Em, do you remember the road trip we planned to the Grand Canyon?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Of course," I replied, my heart aching at the thought. "We were going to do it right after your last big project." He nodded. "I don't want to leave this world with regrets. Let's make it happen." I knew how much that trip meant to him, but the thought of him enduring the physical strain seemed impossible. Still, his determination was unshakable, and I couldn't bear to deny him this one final wish. We discussed the idea with his doctor, who hesitated at first but eventually agreed to discharge him under strict conditions. We prepared meticulously, ensuring he'd be comfortable and safe during the journey. That night, as I tucked him into bed, he looked at me with tears in his eyes. "Thank you, Em," he whispered, "for everything. I couldn't have asked for a better partner." His words broke something in me, but I held it together for his sake. "You've always been my everything, John," I replied, pressing a kiss to his forehead. The next morning, we set off on our long-awaited adventure. It wasn't the carefree road trip we'd envisioned in our youth. His wheelchair and medical equipment were constant reminders of our reality, but it was ours. We took our time, stopping at scenic spots along the way. John's eyes lit up as he took in the sprawling landscapes, and for a brief moment, I saw the vibrant man I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. By the time we reached the Grand Canyon, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the vast expanse. John held my hand tightly, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "It's beautiful," he murmured, So are you, I said, unable to hold back my tears. He chuckled softly, his voice tinged with exhaustion. Don't cry, Em. This isn't goodbye. Not yet. We sat there in silence, letting the beauty of the moment envelop us. It felt like time had stopped, and for the first time in months, I allowed myself to simply be. The next few days were a blur of emotions as we made our way back home. John was weaker than ever, but his spirit remained strong. I have one last favor to ask, he said one evening, his voice barely audible. Anything, I replied without hesitation. He smiled faintly, his eyes full of love. Talk to me every day, no matter what, even when I'm gone. Promise me, Em. I promised, my heart breaking at the thought of a life without him. But I knew this was his way of staying connected, even after he was gone. As I lay beside him that night, listening to his shallow breaths, I realized how much I had learned from John, not just about love but about resilience, gratitude, and the importance of living fully, even in the face of despair. That's the thing about love, isn't it? It doesn't just endure, it transforms you. Even when life feels impossibly heavy, love finds a way to carry you through. When we returned to Chicago after our road trip, John's health declined rapidly. It was as if his body had expended all its remaining strength to make the journey possible. I watched helplessly as the vibrant man I'd loved for so long grew frail and pale, his energy flickering like a candle in the wind. Despite this, John never let go of his quiet dignity. He continued to smile for me, to ask about my day, and to remind me that every moment we had left together mattered. One evening, as I prepared his medication, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I cautiously approached the door. When I opened it, I was greeted by an unsettling sight: John's mother, his brother Mike, and Mike's wife Lisa, all standing on the porch with their children in tow. They were carrying bags, and their expressions were a mix of smugness and determination. Emily, we've come to take care of things, John's mother announced, stepping forward as if she already owned the place. Take care of what? I asked, blocking her entry. This house. It belongs to John's family now. Since his, she trailed off, her eyes scanning the living room behind me. My heart pounded as I realized their intent. They weren't here out of concern or grief, they were here to claim what they believed was rightfully theirs. I stood my ground. This house doesn't belong to you, I said firmly. John made sure of that. They exchanged confused glances, clearly not expecting resistance. Mike stepped forward, holding out a piece of paper. He left a will, he said, thrusting it toward me. I glanced at the document. It was indeed written in John's handwriting but lacked any legal seals or signatures. It was nothing more than a hastily written note, and I suspected how they had obtained it. I'm sorry, but this isn't valid, I said, handing it back. John's mother's face twisted in anger. Don't be ridiculous. We're his family. Of course. This house belongs to us. You don't even have children, what could you possibly need all this space for? Her words stung, but I refused to let them see how much they affected me. John transferred ownership to me before he passed. I said calmly, this house is mine, and I have the documents to prove it. Their shock was almost comical. Mike sputtered, that can't be true, while Lisa glared at me as if I'd personally robbed her. I'll show you the paperwork if you'd like, I said, stepping back into the house. But I suggest you leave before this gets any more unpleasant. They didn't leave. Instead, they demanded to see the documents, their voices growing louder with each passing moment. I quickly realized that reasoning with them was futile. I excused myself and called David, the lawyer John and I had hired when we first suspected this might happen. Within an hour, David arrived, his calm demeanor and professional attire a stark contrast to the chaos brewing in my living room. He greeted everyone politely, then got straight to work. Let's start by reviewing this alleged will. David said, holding out his hand. Reluctantly, John's mother handed it over. After a few moments of reading, David looked up and said, "This document holds no legal weight. It lacks the necessary signatures and notarization to be considered a valid will. Furthermore, Mr. Thompson legally transferred ownership of this property to Emily before his passing. As documented here." He pulled out the official paperwork, complete with John's signature and the legal seals. The color drained from their faces as the reality sank in. "This can't be right," Mike muttered, his voice trembling. "It is," David said firmly. "I suggest you respect the legal process and leave this property immediately. If you choose to contest this, you'll only incur further legal fees and damages." Their defeat was palpable, but they weren't ready to give up entirely. "You'll regret this," Lisa hissed as they gathered their things. "I already regret letting you into my home," I replied, holding the door open for them. As they left, I felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. I turned to David and said, "Thank you for coming so quickly." He smiled kindly. "John trusted you to protect what he worked so hard for. I'm glad I could help." That night, I sat beside John's portrait and told him everything. "You'd have been proud of me," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. I stood up for us, for what we built together. The aftermath of the confrontation left me emotionally drained. But I knew the battle wasn't entirely over. John's family had always been relentless, and I suspected they wouldn't give up so easily. Sure enough, a few days later, I received a call from David. "They've contacted another lawyer," he said. "They're claiming that John's unsigned will should hold weight because it was written in his own handwriting." I sighed, gripping the phone tightly. "What does this mean for us?" "It means they'll likely try to file a case," David replied. "But don't worry, we have enough evidence to disprove their claims. Stay calm, and let me handle it." Staying calm was easier said than done. The thought of going through a legal battle while still mourning John felt unbearable. But then I remembered his words. The quiet strength in his voice when he'd asked me to protect what we'd built. I couldn't let him down. As the days turned into weeks, the tension began to take its toll. I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder, half expecting another unannounced visit from his family. Even the sound of the doorbell sent a chill down my spine. One evening, as I sat by the fireplace, trying to lose myself in a book, there was a knock at the door. My heart raced as I got up. But to my relief, it was David. "I thought I'd drop by and update you in person," he said, stepping inside. Over a cup of tea, he explained the latest developments. "They've backed off from filing a case," he said. "It seems they've realized the evidence is stacked against them. But they've asked for a settlement, a small amount of money to help with their financial struggles." I stared at him, incredulous. "They want me to reward them for trying to steal my home?" David held up a hand. "I advised them that you're unlikely to agree. But I promised to bring the request to you. The decision is entirely yours." I didn't even have to think about it. "No," I said firmly. "They've caused enough pain. I won't reward their behavior." David nodded, a faint smile on his lips. "That's what I thought you'd say. I'll make sure they understand your position." After he left, I sat alone in the quiet house, the weight of everything pressing down on me. My gaze fell on John's portrait, his kind eyes staring back at me. "What would you do, John?" I whispered. "Would you forgive them? Would you let it go?" The answer came not as words but as a memory. I thought of the countless times John had stood up for what was right. Even when it was difficult, he'd always believed in fairness and accountability. And I knew he would want me to do the same. The next morning, I called David. "I want to pursue damages," I said, my voice steady. "Not just for me but for John. They need to understand that actions have consequences." David wasted no time. He filed a claim for damages, citing their attempt to coerce John into signing the fraudulent will. The process was slow, But when the ruling finally came, it was in our favor. John's family was ordered to pay $30,000 in damages. Their reaction was predictable: pleas for leniency, claims of financial hardship, and even attempts to guilt me into reconsidering. But I stood firm. This isn't about revenge, I told David after one particularly emotional hearing. It's about ensuring they don't do this to anyone else. The compensation didn't bring me any joy or closure, but it did bring a sense of justice. John's family sold their home and moved into a small apartment in Kansas City. Their lives became a stark contrast to the comfort they had once demanded. As for me, I found peace in the quiet moments. I returned to work at the diner, finding solace in the familiar rhythm of serving customers and chatting with my colleagues. Every evening, I sat by John's portrait, just as I had promised, sharing the events of the day with him. Some nights, it felt as though he was still there, listening, his warm presence filling the room. And though the ache of his absence never fully faded, I found strength in the love we'd shared and the life we'd built together. As the years passed, I carried John's memory with me, honoring his final wish to cherish life and never stop talking to him. Every evening, I'd sit by his portrait and share my day, feeling a comforting sense of his presence. Though life wasn't always easy, I found strength in the love we'd built and the lessons he'd taught me about resilience and gratitude. John's family faded from my thoughts, their greed and bitterness replaced by my focus on the blessings in my life, my friends, my work, and the quiet peace of our home. I realized that even in the face of loss, love has the power to endure, to transform, and to guide us forward. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Life Stories for more heartfelt tales of resilience, love, and life's profound lessons.